Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 207. This week, Mike and Barry join me, and we talk about cross-cutting large panels, knowing exactly when to sharpen a hand plane blade, using an undersized flattening stone, pinning joints with dowels, and we take another swing at the question, is woodworking art? But first, I really want to thank everyone for the great comments that we've been getting on Mike's video series. I just want to read one of them right now because it sums up the way that I feel about the video workshop series. You guys are taking this site to the next level constantly. There is nowhere to get information like this. It's so valuable, and it is like having a full day one-on-one private lesson with a professional. Subscribing to this site is one of the best and first investments a new or seasoned woodworker should make. Thank you, user 7132706. I really appreciate that. And that's what we try and make the video workshops like. We try and make them as personable and as much like you, the viewer, are there in the shop with the woodworker as they're building a piece. If you have not been following along with Mike's video workshop, now is the time. And if you're unsure about it, you can, of course, as always, start a 2-week trial. Sit down, grab some popcorn, and watch the first 6 episodes of Mike's Hanging Wall Cabinet video series. And every Tuesday, you can expect more of that until sometime in April, probably around Fine Woodworking Live. So, and also, if you have not signed up for Fine Woodworking Live, we are going to sell out this year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Early bird pricing is still going, so get in there. Sign up for Fine Woodworking Live. It is woodworking geekery at its finest, and it's a blast. So, hope to see you then. All right, enough about that. Let's start the show. Have you guys ever cut yourself with your chisel and you're proud?
You're proud?
Mm-hmm.
Proud about the cut?
Yeah. Like this morning, I barely, I've got some gouges hanging from the wall, and I went to grab a screw, and I touched the end of a gouge so insignificantly. There's no way I should have wound up with a cut from it. But I cut myself. I was like, hell yeah.
I've sawn into my finger a couple times with my Ryoba. Thanks, Ryoba. And just all of a sudden, it's like my thumb, and my off thumb. It's like, this hurts so bad. Oh my god! And it's just like a good old streak down into the nail.
Into the nail?
Yeah. So I think it's the way I hold the board, and just you're thinking about the cut line, not where your thumb is. So if I ever get a table saw stop. That's what I've learned.
Wow.
Hey, Mike.
I have nothing to add to that conversation.
I have never cut myself.
Well, I think it's the cutting, because I'm cutting vertically. Like I'm squatting down and the teeth are vertical instead of leaning over at a vise and the saw teeth are horizontal. And so I see the whole length of the saw there, kind of. Whereas with the Ryoba, it's vertical. If I'm holding underneath it and I'm above the board, who knows where those teeth are underneath?
So you use Japanese saws most of the time?
Unless I'm widening a kerf to make it easier for a wedge.
So do you actually get on your knee, lay the board flat on your bench, get on your knees and saw?
Yeah. More of a squatter, but yeah, I get down.
Okay. Yeah. I get down.
What do you do for saws, Ben?
So hand saws, I've got mostly Western style, but when I bought my fret slotting saw, it's a Japanese saw, and I have found myself grabbing that almost every now and then. I'll be like, oh, I should use my other one so it doesn't feel bad. Because I honestly have thoughts like that where it's like, oh, I should throw that one a bone right now. But no, I for more aggressive cuts, definitely my Western style saw, just because I always worry I'm going to break the Japanese saw. My Dozuki.
Yeah.
I don't want to break the teeth because I need it for that one thing.
Right.
Mike, you use all Western style except for Kumiko. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like the Japanese saw for a lot of trim work, for cutting small parts and stuff.
But you don't dovetail with it though, right?
No, sometimes I'll pull it out just because I'm going to dovetail with this. And I had like this super fine, really, really thin plate Japanese saw, which I use for kumiko. And it works really, really well. And I thought, I'm going to cut some dovetails with this. And so you make the cut, and you can barely see the curve.
Yeah,
it's like razor. So I thought, this is cool. Then I get out my fret saw to like wiggle it down the curve and cut across. It won't fit. So that wasn't, no, I don't dovetail with that. So.
Right on. Well, that just fizzled out. Should we answer some questions?
Yeah. I'm down.
All right. Question number 1 is from Greg. I've been building furniture for about 10 years now and have always had access to larger machines that your typical production shop provides. Belt sanders, jointer, panel saw. I'm transitioning out on my own, and I have a smaller shop set up with your typical machines, including a cabinet saw. I'm familiar with most workarounds for getting the same results with smaller or no machines. I had a question regarding the cross-cutting of larger panels, though. It is an aspect that is always glossed over in articles. Say I'm making a dresser with flat panel sides, 18 to 21 inches deep. Now I know how to tackle the joinery, but how do I go about the initial sizing without a panel saw? And how do I achieve repeatable results so my carcass is square? Circ saw, track saw, router and straight edge, special sled, those all seem like eyeball methods that introduce room for error. So you are a lover of the panel saw.
Panel saw?
Yeah.
For sheet goods, little bit of, it's like if you have a big 7-foot tabletop, you slide it on that panel saw, zip it down. So panel saw being like the vertical thing with the rollers that you can slide big giant sheets of plywood
for anyone,
into.
it's like the Home Depot. There's a circ saw mounted on guide rails. I worked in a hardware store that had a panel saw that was awful.
Yeah.
And it clouded my judgment of all panel saws.
They're what they are. I think they can work really, really well, especially if it's not in a group shop where a lot of people are doing stupid things with it, especially if it's not at a home center or hardware store. The next best thing is a group shop like we had at Fine Woodworking. And then I think if you had it in your own shop and you did a lot and had a fresh, real nice crosscut blade on that saw, it would work super, super well. The technique I would recommend is actually my favorite technique of all time of the week.
What is this guy fast forwarding for?
I'm not. I'm just saying.
Suspense.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, and I'll think of a different technique.
I'm Mike Pickfitch. I can just whip him out willy-nilly.
Do you want to hear
Let me just scroll through my Instagram. Yes, that's an all-time favorite technique right there.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Wow, guys, this is cold. And accurate because I did post a video of it on Instagram yesterday.
Oh, man.
So this is a super, super cool trick. Basically, I have an L fence that I clamp to my rip fence, and it sits over the blade, flush with the outside edge of the blade. So the outside edge of the blade is exactly flush with the edge of the L. So you get, basically, it's like it cuts exactly where the L fence stops. And then I have a push pad, which is just like a rectangular piece of MDF or plywood. So as long as the stock is wide. And I was just doing this because I was cutting some stock for drawer bottoms, which had already been glued up. And it was like 13 inches plus. And my crosscut sled, because I've like padded out my fence so many times to get a zero clearance cut, I only had like maybe less than 12 inches. So rather than pull all that stuff off, and it's especially for stock, even if it was wider than my crosscut sled in good condition, it's still a cool trick. I just take a square, I mark a line on the edge of the stock, and I put this pad, I have sandpaper on the bottom, and I screwed a little handle to the top of it. You just put this push pad on your pencil line, and then you ride that push pad, that rides against the L fence. The offcut of the whatever you're cutting rides below the L fence, and you have a lot of clearance for that waste to clear that between the blade and the fence. Usually I think the L fence is about 4 inches wide, so there's plenty of room underneath to keep that offcut from binding between the blade. And you just run that push pad along the L fence, and it's a perfect cut. It's super, super clean.
I watched that video, and I always feel like there's that. Is there like a meme of a cat saying, "I need to buy a boat or something," or I should get a what is it? Whatever. Stop thinking in memes. But I saw that, and I was like, I need to make an L fence.
Yeah,
It's that might have put me over the edge right there.
Yeah.
Like I have heard Bob just L fence, L fence, L fence, L fence.
yeah.
And that last one where it's like, okay, that really would make my need for a large crosscut sled minimal.
Right. Because I hate big crosscut sleds.
That's the worst.
And while I think, and on my post, there's a lot of track saw defenders. I just use a track saw. That's all. And it's like, whatever.
I just bought a $600 track saw. So I'm good.
No, track saws are cool. And I think especially you get to the point, if you're doing like a 30-inch wide by 6-foot long tabletop, no, I'm not going to do that. I think I would bust out my crappy circ saw and my edge guide, clamp it down and give it a cut. And if I had a track saw, I would use that instead. But I've done tabletops like 20, what was that tabletop? It's probably like 24 inches wide by 30 inches long.
You did that on the elephant?
Yeah.
Dude, because I was going to ask what are your limits, and I wasn't expecting
Yeah.
24. That's awesome.
I think, so it's not so long that you're really worried about the weight and it sort of binding as you're trying to slide it across the top.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do pretty good size panels that way.
That's rad.
And I find that, if you can strike a line and it's with a nice sharp pencil, and I don't know if I can use a mechanical pencil, but very
Consistently thick line. Like, consistently thick.
But, you can line up that push pad. It's basically a board to a pencil line. It's really accurate.
His concern was it seems like these are all eyeball methods. It doesn't seem any less eyeball-y. It all depends on your layout and fence straightness at that point, which
Yeah.
is almost any operation, right?
Yeah, I'd argue that it's more accurate than a big giant crosscut sled, which is going to have some wiggle to it anyway. And if you're doing a big panel on a crosscut sled, the weight is not even over the sled. You're like really torquing that thing through the cut. It's never 100% square. So if I am doing big parts on a crosscut sled, I'll really pay attention to the orientation of the parts so that, okay, if it's not exactly 90 degrees, my two case sides are trapezoidally equal, right? So you don't have one side going up and the other side going down, and you try to dovetail everything, and you end up with a wonky case. So, you shoot for square, and then you manage in expect to deal with not perfectly square. But with this, I think if you can strike a square line and you can put your push tab up to it, I would argue for wide panels, it could be more accurate than a crosscut slide. But not as consistent.
Okay, so the consistency.
But it's consistent. Yeah, no, just deal with it. It's good. And here's the thing. Okay, so let's say you do your two case sides, and one is off by just a skim, just like a 32nd of an inch. That's hard to get back on the crosscut sled and sort of wiggle it back over. But if you can put this push pad, just inset it, just that little hair, and you can feel that offset, and you can just skim that thing right off. And it's a really cool technique if you're fitting doors to openings and you need to sort of angle an end for not quite square. You can just put that thing on there and just angle it exactly where you want it, make a cut, and do super, super precise, thin cuts.
Are you telling me that your door openings aren't always perfectly square, Mike?
Nothing is ever perfectly square, but my gaps are even.
Okay, so I don't want to contradict the great Mike Pekovich, but I would say for consistency's sake, that's where a track saw and a crosscut table, if he's worried about consistency, I think a track saw is his answer. Because like I made a crosscut table where holds the track square to a fence,
Yeah.
and you can put a stop block on that.
Okay. So we're getting into like that's like a whole different thing. Like you got the table and it's like you're set up for that. And
Well,
I'm
no, it's the same size as a panel sled or something that you can hang on the wall. It's not a table,
but it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a 2-hour project, and if he's worrying this much about, and I err with Barry, maybe he doesn't need to worry this much about it. But if he is worrying this much about it, that is another answer: a crosscut sled with a track saw that you can add stops to get consistent.
Yeah, but if you have a table saw, do it. If you already have a track saw, here's a cool way to set it up. Yeah, absolutely. No, track saws are awesome.
This isn't the only reason to buy a track saw.
I just hate having to pull out my Festool, pull out the shop vac, get everything set up, and on top of that, I don't have a Festool track saw. So, but it's like whenever I pull out my Domino's, oh God, it's like, I don't know, 10 minutes. To like,
I have a track saw, and it's like, do I really want to deal with you? Could I shoot this square after I saw it? It's a whole mental thing.
It's a thing. Would it work fine? And I think I've seen your little table. You had it in the old shop.
Yeah.
And it's super cool. It's just a different technique. That'd be fine. But he shouldn't do that. He should just use a table saw and an L fence.
For 18 and 21 inches, I absolutely agree. For larger than you're comfortable with, this is a great option. And if stops and consistency are bugging you that much,
like I think especially on your system where you're adding a stop, if I'm like busting out some plywood panels for built-ins and I need to do more than just say 2 pieces to the same length, I think that's a super cool way to do it.
Yeah. Barry?
I don't have much to add. Track saw. I've seen some cool track saw squares for that track. If you don't trust your layout line and you want something that'll register off the track, that seems like a valuable option.
To get the track square to the edge. Yeah, I know. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And these are all concepts that would apply to a homemade track saw setup with
like the zero clearance.
Well, yeah, with a circular saw on a guide. These, you don't have to go the $700 to $800 Festool route to wander into the track saw world. So
I saw someone cleaning up an end with I forget where I saw this, with a compression bit.
Yeah.
That seems interesting. If you get close to your line, clamp a fence on, square it up with a compression bit.
Yeah. Compression bit's router bit that's designed to not tear out on the top or bottom.
Right. It has like a double helical kind of shear cut.
Yeah.
The quality seemed good. I don't know how awesome of a solution that is.
Right.
Because I'm guessing, did he say he has a table saw?
Yeah, so if you have a circ saw and it's not like a really awesome plunge cut track saw with a really 80-tooth blade or something, you can just make a rough cut, put a fence on there and route it flush. That's fine.
And my other thing was build more frame and panel, because the panels don't have to be square. They just have to fill in the groove.
But then you got to square the panel once it's glued up.
You got to square the case.
Like the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the frame. But the frame can be square just so there's enough allowance around the panel within the groove.
But it's the same problem.
No, it's like
it doesn't need to be square though, the panel.
Right? No, but the frame does.
Once you're glued up.
Oh yeah, but that's not wide cross cuts. You're not dealing with a whole bunch of end grain. It's easier to make square long grain parts, right?
I treat it exactly the same, but you're right. Like if you're hand planing or something.
Hand tool
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting the tools he's working with. But when I don't, that's one of my outs. Like I do not want to square up an 18 wide inch panel, frame and panel. Like that.
Right.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, question number 2. We're going to call this. I've got 2 questions in question number 2. For our little sharpening segment, we'll say. From Len, do you have a standard practice or routine that works as a sort of automatic set point or trigger for when you sharpen your planes and chisels? Or do you rely on the tactile response of the cutter to let you know when it's time to sharpen?
Performance.
Sound many times.
Sound?
Yeah. If I hear, like, I think I will hear a dull blade.
Feel it.
Yeah. I hear it a lot of times because I don't look when I'm watching TV when I'm woodworking most of the time. So
Is the sound down or something?
no, it's there's a sound to a dull blade, and there's a sound to a sharp.
Yeah, and not all sharp is created equal. It's depending on like what the tool is used for. Like my block plane is never as sharp as my smoothing plane. So if I'm chamfering long grain edges and I'm getting a little tear out on that edge, I'll just go for lighter cut or turn it around. And if I'm still getting it where the grain turns around, it's like, darn it, I'll sharpen my block plane. Smoothing plane, it's like there, I think it's sound, it's feel, it's ease of pushing, it's the thinness of the cut. Because when a blade is super, super sharp, you can take a really, really thin shaving, and then it'll kind of stop as that edge gets kind of beat over a little bit. So you take a little bit deeper cut. Okay, now it's cutting again, but now you're taking thicker cuts and getting more tear out. So, it's a performance thing. And my everyday chisels, if they can't find the scribe line, like a baseline for dovetails, if I can't work back and if that chisel can't find the scribe line, I have to sharpen it. But for Kumiko, where you're pairing pine end grain, which is one of the toughest tests for an edge, as soon as I'm getting tear out on that edge, as soon as I'm getting some chipping, I've got to sharpen it. So basically, I'm sharpening my Kumiko chisel, much, much sooner and much sharper than a regular chisel. And I'm sharpening a smoothing plane blade much more often than a block plane blade. So it's all, it's all depending on what you're doing.
So you don't have, like, I know Chris Bexford, once a month he sharpens everything he's used or whatever in the shop.
Yeah.
And he even says whether it needs it or not.
That's kind of, I have a lot of hand planes and I'm a little bit lazy. So it's like I'll use my really good plane when it's sharp. And when it starts to not be sharp, I'll pull out my jack plane, which is sharp, and use that. And then it's like, well, I got this old, Bedrock 605. I think that's pretty sharp. And, and then you get to the point where nothing is good to do that final work. And then I'll break down and if I have to like really break down and sharpen, I'll start to look at my blades and tend to do more than one, but far less than all.
Do you check out your edges when you pick up the tool? Like when I'm getting a chisel out for whatever task, and it had been in the drawer, I'll look at that edge, and it's compulsive. It's habit.
So I have my chisels lined up, and they're at eye level, and I can see the edges like in the windowsill.
I wouldn't like that.
And I'll say, okay, I need a chisel. I'll look up and I'll go, all right, 3/4 needs to be sharp and 1/2 inch. So yeah, that I don't know. I sharpen hand planes, and I've gone out of my way to not have a lot of hand planes. I sharpen hand planes as soon as I feel
And he still has a job
need.
here.
I have 5 right now on the rack.
Okay.
So I've got my bevel up, jack, Mike's number 3 that I need to try.
You owe me a taco for that.
I owe you many tacos for that. Okay. We'll taco down. I'll be paying that off with tacos. And it's funny because for a while I was trying to live with just the bevel up jack, thinking, okay, maybe this is
And
all
one
I need.
iron, right?
I have a second iron. I haven't done it up yet. I thought maybe this is all I need, and it's that problem where not every tool requires a super, super sharp edge. And I found myself having to sharpen it all the time because it'd be like, oh, I'm going to hog away a bunch of material.
Yes.
Okay, now let's
Now
set
you
it
need a
real
fine
fine.
cut.
And then it's like, oh, come on. Now I got to go sharpen it because I
Right.
hogged away all this material with it.
And it's like, well, wait, do I want to hog away the material on all the other parts? And then, and it's crazy.
Yeah. So now that I've incorporated the 3 into my workflow, it's that jack is generally like wide open mouth, and I'm just taking off a bunch of material with it, pull out the 3, couple swipes, move on. So that's, I don't know how I got on that, but that's how I take it. I do sharpen planes as I need them, but I'm glad that I've incorporated another plane and that I am going to keep super, super sharp and everything else can suffer.
Yeah. If I'm in the shop on a regular basis, I know the sharpness of my go-to tools. Like I know the sharpness of every chisel I have that I use.
I mean, at this moment, like you can tell me that one's a 7, that one's a 9.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Just
Mike's like 7.
In my head, when I'm coming up with the second number, I'm like, don't go lower than 7. Don't say lower than 7.
so that's the rusted out one in my tool chest I use to open paint cans with. That's my 7. Yeah. So,
But what about, because
I got called out by Andrew Hunter on Instagram.
oh my God, we're going here.
I am.
We're going here.
Because I posted a picture of a fluffy shaving, and it's like, yeah, I'm happy with this. And Andrew, he kind of, very, very subtly and kindly, because I love Andrew, and he's a good guy, he said, so Mike, he just said, so what is that shaving telling you? It's like, it's telling me I'm not as sharp as Andrew Hunter. Which I know and I accept, and it was all good. But the shaving, and I think what he was getting at is there was some slices in the shaving, meaning there was some minor scratches in the blade. And I kind of call that's like a spaghetti shaving, where overall it's like really good, and you have, these ribbons, but you're still getting a good surface. It's like, I'm not sharpening you yet, just for a scratch. So, yeah.
Well, and you had said at lunch that you were flattening or you were smoothing drawer bottoms or something.
Yeah, drawer sides.
Yeah. And you said, okay, well, that shaving told me that I have a couple of nicks in my blade, and that's fine right now because I'm still going to plane the drawers when I fit.
Right. So I could tell the shaving was thin enough, so I was still maybe closer to 1,000th of an inch than 2,000, which is good. I'm not getting tear out. Basswood is super fun and easy. And it had a nice camber on it, so I wasn't getting plane track. So everything was good, but a couple slices, no, I'm not sharpening that because this is like working and it's basswood and
the functionally sharp too, you have,
Yeah. So it's like, so you're never 100% sharp, but that doesn't necessarily mean your tools aren't workable. But I do think you need to have an understanding of where you're at with your tools and based on the performance you expect of them. Yeah.
So you have sharpening parties, don't you?
That's all I did this weekend was flatten backs and sharpen. That's going to be my recommendation later. But I do things where if I need to sharpen my 3/4 inch chisel, I'm probably going to hit at least one other because I'm there. And I don't know if this is right or wrong. I don't feel the urge to flatten my stone going from a 3/4 inch chisel to a 1/2 inch. So it's just kind of do it now while you're thinking about it, get it done. Because when that 3/4's dull, you're going to grab that.
Right, yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was
sharpen two things.
Yeah.
I was watching like a cooking show. It was this, I forget his name. He was a French chef, really, really good. But he was saying that he talked about waxing poetic about a seasoned cast iron frying pan skillet and how that's like the ultimate tool to work with if you're a chef. But he was saying, but I'm just not, in the kitchen every single day using this thing. So I'm just using nonstick because that's its own thing. And you really have to kind of be on your game. And I think it's that same sort of thing.
That's cool.
So like you're saying that you at the Laurel Diner would not perform like the guy who's always at the Laurel Diner on that cast iron.
Yeah, exactly. Griddle. Like his...
Like he performs because he knows that.
Yeah,
griddle.
he knows that. He knows the hot spots. He knows, where to steam the hash browns and where to get that.
But if you're a
bacon
wandering
going.
Chef, you're better off with the known entity of nonstick.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so flattening from George. For my sharpening setup, I use a combination DMT diamond plate and Japanese waterstones. I use the 300-600 diamond stone for heavy reshaping work and 1,400 and 4,000 waterstone for the final edge. I also use the 600 side of the diamond plate to lap my waterstones before each use. But back when I ordered my diamond plate, I unwittingly purchased one that is slightly smaller than my Waterstones in length and width. This means I have to make multiple passes with the diamond plate on top of the Waterstone in order to fully lap the Waterstones. Do you think the fact that my diamond plate is smaller than my Waterstone will eventually lead to them being less and less flat over time? Or am I worrying for nothing? I should have asked him how much smaller, because I feel like they come 2x6 and 3x8.
Yeah.
And most Japanese plates are 3x8-ish.
Yeah, if it's slightly smaller, if it's like a little pocket diamond stone where it's an inch by 4 inches, that's going to be super tough.
Would a 2x6
Sure, no problem.
be fine for
Because
you?
you're skewing it, right?
Yeah, you work your angle, skew it one way, skew it the other way, spin it around.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a problem. Put some pencil lines on there and make sure they're all gone by the time you're done. I don't think it's that bad.
That's one thing that always bothered me when I had Waterstones is the diaphragm. And this is like, we're in the world of like with things that Ben is annoyed by that most people should not be annoyed by. But the diaphragm that I had was so much bigger than the Waterstones.
Yeah.
There was no good way of storing it with them. Why is it that much bigger?
Barry's going to answer this. Like, you know why.
Well, but I think it would to help alleviate these kinds of problems. But I would still recommend rotating. So my lapping plate's a lot bigger. I still rotate my stone 180 degrees to compensate for hand. Like my palm probably almost certainly pushes down to. So I'm rotating the stone 180.
Yeah.
So maybe so they can charge you more for it. But in my head,
But it supports the whole stone as you're going back and forth. You're not going off the stone as much. It's just it's awesome.
it's nicer.
That's what I had always thought.
Yeah.
But if you're saying it doesn't matter in one hand.
I'd say it's not.
It's like functionally sharp. Like you can still
It's not
flatten.
necessary, but it's preferred.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
nice.
Gotcha. That is a good point, though, to flip the stone halfway through.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, spin it around.
Do you do that even though some of your stones are mounted in the tackle box thing? Do you spin
Tackle
the whole
box.
tackle box around?
No, I spin my diamond plate around. Diamond plate's on top.
Oh, okay.
And I
you're
just
holding
spin
the-
it, left,
Oh, you don't
skew it, spin it, go.
Invert the tackle box?
That's true. Yeah, because if the whole stone is not level,
Yeah.
it's like equally not. All right.
I find it's easier to take the diamond plate to the top of the stone rather than have the stone resting on the diamond plate.
Yeah.
But if I have a loose stone in the diaphragm, which is super huge, boom. I'm putting the stone on top of that because that plate's super heavy. Everything else it's on top, so a smaller diamond plate is not going to hurt you. Unless, if you have 220 wet dry sandpaper on something flat, then of course your stone's on top of that.
So I think the consensus is he's worrying for nothing.
Yeah, but
You're good, George.
it's like this is a safe place for you to stress. It's like,
All right, let's move on to our all-time favorite techniques of all time for this week. Barry.
So is Mike's going to be for next week because he already burned one?
Mike is like the vending machine of techniques.
B6. So my first real workbench didn't have a front vise. It had only an end vise.
Yep.
The one that I have
Loser.
now, has a little front vise. Both of those made edge jointing long boards hard. So this is something that I got from Peter Follansby, who I think got it from Jenny Alexander. I might be wrong. So I'm in really good company. Is you put a hand screw on the bench and secure it down, clamp it down, hold fast it down, put the far end of your longboard in that, squeeze it tight, put the near end in the clamp, the far end up against the stop, and you can edge plane all day and that board ain't going nowhere. And it works fantastically. And so that way it's not pivoting around or like rotating in your front vise.
right.
So that edge joining long boards when you're not equipped for it otherwise.
Yeah, when you don't have a workbench outfitted with vices, wooden hand screws are your best friend.
And on my next bench, I am absolutely making the face of the front vise flush with the front of the bench.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, because that's sticking out. So that's what's killing me on this bench is it's all proud of the front, the way I
Exactly.
mounted it, and
Right.
that's not nearly as good as it could be.
Yeah. Do you have a little spacer, the width of your vice jaw sticking out?
I'm making one because I'm going to dovetail some stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when it really comes into play.
That helps a lot.
But hand screws will help you there too. Because then you just attach the hand screw to the other side of the panel, then clamp that to the front of the bench. Oh, but you have that wide apron on your bench.
No, I took a hatchet and
Paradigm apartment woodworker. I took a hatchet to it so I didn't bother my neighbors.
I don't know why I wanted to. I'm like, I haven't used my hewing hatchet in a while. So I was out my front porch just dying of sweat, just hewing away at this thing, waiting for someone to call the cops, But no
They
one
were
did.
afraid. You crossed the line where nobody will call the cops on you.
So I need a little shop hatchet. What should I get?
Anything double bevel? Right? Are you just splitting up stuff for like straight grain?
You know what's
Yeah.
like you like nice things.
See, this is where I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah. What hatchet do I need?
Oh.
Gransworth Brooks Forester.
Is that the little guy?
Yeah, little guy. I've got one I can lend you
All right.
to see if you dig the situation.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. All right.
And how many tacos does that cost?
I've heard good things about the.
Oh, the
she's
Robin
in-
Wood.
The Robin
Robin
Wood.
Wood, yeah.
But is it Carla? I think she's over in Great Britain. Holfs? Oh, I feel like a jerk for not remembering this.
You are.
But she's like a new person on the scene, and I've talked with Fallensby and Dawson Moore. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're trying out her new act. It's pretty good.
It's only like 6-month waiting list, probably.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for.
I'll find that name.
Shall I go?
Yeah.
All right. Mine is like entirely website promotional and everything, but it is French polishing. It is watching John Coffey French polish something and following his techniques. And I know you're going to make fun of me because I've been French polishing a ukulele for about 4 weeks,
I'm not making fun of you.
but that is game changer for me.
Yeah.
I think one element of it was, watching John do it and seeing the techniques. And I should have practiced, because if I had practiced, I'd have learned that I was probably being a little timid with my shellac and not putting enough on.
Okay.
I was afraid of putting too much on.
His technique is really wild. I watched that and it's amazing. It's really different, but he obviously does really, really good work. He puts like a heavy coat on early and then not really a lot
And
later
then just
on.
kind of moves it around.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that is because he was grain filling as well.
Okay.
So that the shellac was part of the grain filling process with what is it? Pumice, thank you. But I was not grain filling and I was using a 1 pound cut.
Okay.
Wait, is seal coat 1 or 2 pound?
It's
2?
Three?
It's technically 2, and I thin it 50-50, but it acts much heavier than a 1 pound cut.
Okay. Well, I was using around a 1 pound cut.
Yep.
And it took a long time. But the way that I did it is I actually brought it into the house. And after dinner, we'd just be talking. I'd grab the ukulele and throw a coat on, stick it back up on the little mount that I made. And over the course of a few weeks, I just every now and then just pull it out and throw a coat of shellac on it. It was a very, very zen way of finishing this.
Let me ask you this. Why are you waiting so long between coats of shellac when it dries in like 2 seconds?
Well, I wanted it to. I was sanding between on some of them. So every now and then I'd pull out 600 and sand away some, and go back to it. The real reason why I was waiting between is it was just I'd walk by it and put a coat on.
Okay.
And it was just part of my daily
All right.
routine. I could have done 5 coats in a day easily.
Yeah.
I just didn't.
Okay, that's cool because I didn't watch all of the John Coffey video, and I was afraid like at some point in the video it says, now it's really important to wait 24 hours before you go. It's like, what?
Well, no, there is a point where he does wait and lets the shellac, because I mean it'll be dry but it's not cured.
Exactly.
So and it'll actually shrink back from that.
Okay.
So in between polishes, he does let
Give it a
it
little bit,
rest.
right.
And part of the problem too was he was doing a large panel or a large tabletop.
Right.
So by the time you got to one end, the end you started at was dry.
Yes.
So he could work continually.
Exactly.
And he says that throughout the process that the size of the piece is important.
Exactly.
With the ukulele, it was like done.
Yes.
Okay, put it down. Go play Hot Wheels with my son.
Exactly.
You know, it was.
Yes.
I couldn't do multiple coats on it because it was so small.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, if you rush it and you start going wet on wet, you start picking up.
and then
when
you're
you should
burning
pick
through
in-
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, John Coffey's video on French polishing.
Cool.
Available on finewoodworking.com for unlimited members. Mike, have you come up with another Instagram
Nah,
post?
I already talked about mine.
We don't get a B6?
He doesn't want to embarrass us.
That's true.
Turning drawer pulls blanks.
Really?
Yeah. So what I used to do is between centers, I would turn like a length of stock, 10 or 12 inches long, enough to get a bunch of pulls out of it down to whatever diameter. And then I would get out my parting tool and my little open end wrench to whatever diameter I'm turning the pull to. And I would do like these little successive notches down the way. And then cut them apart into these little blanks that have the tenon on them that I could stick in a drill press chuck in my lathe to finish the turning. Problem with that is the diameter needs to be close. It can't be too tight because if you have this little tiny drawer pull and that tenon is just like a hair too tight, it's horrendously difficult to try to sand or file down that tenon without scarring up the pull itself to get it to fit. So my new technique, it's a lot easier. I turn a length of stock. In this case, I turn a length of stock, 1/2 inch diameter, because that's a little bit larger than what I want the diameter of the pulls to be, 10 or 12 inches long. Went to the bandsaw and cut those up into about 1.5 inch long blanks. So now you have like this little Tootsie Roll of ebony, 1/2 inch diameter, 1.5 inches long. Then I chuck one end of that into a drill press chuck and turn a 1/2 inch long tenon onto that quarter. So in this case, they're 1/4 inch diameter tenons onto the end of each blank. But because they're not these little notches along a long blank, the end of the tenon is like open. So I have a board with a bunch of 1/4 inch holes drilled in it that I take it down with my wrench, which is slightly oversized because open end wrenches, they're slightly bigger than what they say. And then I'll turn it down and because it's open, I can stick this board with a 1/4 inch hole onto the tenon to like double check that diameter.
Nice.
So
I learned that whole open end wrenches is slightly bigger than what they say thing last night because I was turning a 1 inch tenon.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep from buying a disc sander.
Okay.
So I'm going to mount a disc on a faceplate on the lathe. And then I thought, oh, well, if I could just make a little table to stick in the banjo.
Okay.
So a little table with a 1 inch tenon coming out.
Oh, brilliant.
And you just
Yeah.
put it right up against it. And there's your little disc sander that you use once every year. And then you move on with your life.
So it's like a little faceplate that mounts on the lathe.
Yeah.
And then you have this little table that bolts into your banjo.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so I was doing that last night, and I turned the 1 inch tenon, and fits in the banjo, and then I drill 1 inch hole, and out came the lump hammer.
Oh, a little tight.
Yeah, a little tight. almost broke it, but all right,
Very cool.
let's take a break. Enter by January 31st for your chance to win the Woodpecker Shop Upgrade Giveaway, which is valued at more than $2,000. It includes a premium router table package with Porter Cable 7518 router motor, a saw gauge 2 with sustainer, their Woodworker's Edge Rule set, and the complete Woodpecker's Drill Press Table Package. This is a pretty stout giveaway, so head on over to finewoodworking.com/woodpeckers and enter for your chance to win today. Question number 3 is from, I don't know if it's but it's from Lois Lane. Hi, I was listening to episode 58. Screw you. No, sorry. Because I was curious about what the answer is to the question, is woodworking considered an art? No, it's not. And I don't know where that came from, but...
Woodworking. Did it say woodworking?
Yeah.
Oh.
The reason I ask is my brother is a woodworker who I consider an artist, and we're having a debate on the subject. He doesn't want to be put in the art category because his pieces are mostly functional, although aesthetic at the same time. What are your thoughts? Are woodworkers artists?
Depends what you're making out of wood. If you're making a sculpture out of wood, that's just the medium you choose to work in. You're an artist.
Are furniture makers artists?
The question, Lois, is you sort of answered it in your question, and it comes down to function. And for me, basically, so let's call a functional object, let's call that craft. So that's the difference between art and craft. Art is self-justifying. Art doesn't need a reason to exist. It doesn't need to do anything. It's just, it's a pure expression of the person who created it. And it is just what it is. Craft or a functional object, it has to serve its function. Otherwise, it's not anything. So I think if you're making something out of wood that has a function, it can be beautiful, and I think it should be. So can craft have a beauty to it? Absolutely. Can art have a function to it? No, because then it's a craft. So, it's basically function or not function. And so I think that, for instance, a chair, if you make a chair which is like 50 feet high and two-dimensional, it's not a chair. It's a sculpture that references a chair. But if you make a chair designed to be sat on and you sit on it and it's beautiful, but it's not comfortable or it breaks, it's a really bad chair. So I think in a certain way, craft is more humble than art. It's like a few notches down, I think, in terms of, like you go to a museum, you have art, and then like furniture, they stick it in decorative arts. I hate that. But anyway, so I think that a functional object, it has to be designed well. It has to be proportioned to its use and to the user. It has to perform the function in a way that adds rather than detracts to the quality of your life or the life of the person who's using it. So a drawer can't stick or rattle. It's got to be nice and smooth. The pull can't be rough or have sharp edges or be ugly. It has to be beautiful and formed to fit the hand. So I think it's a different criteria, and I like the challenge of craft. In fact, I went to art school and found myself in the furniture making program because I like that concrete nature of craft. Is it doing what it should do? And then is it beautiful? I like that combination. So
I think I was right with you until art can't have function.
No, because then it's not art.
Hold on. Is it created without intent to function, or it can't function?
If you're saying, look at this painting, but this little drawer flips out and there's a bird skull inside of it. No, that's still art. It's like...
No, so function, you could study a Monet.
Yeah.
In school, let's say, here's a Monet. I'm the teacher. I want you to mimic these paint strokes. That piece of art's functioning. Or you listen to...
No,
I love Gojira. It's absolutely functional. I love heavy metal at the gym. I normally don't listen to it at the desk. Binzen listens to, I think, Bach or, Debussy while at work. That helps focus. It's functioning. Literature's made me a better person. It's functioning. It's not whether it was intended to. So are you saying art is, and its function isn't there upon inception, or it's not there, period? You know what I mean?
Do you stick it on a wall and look at it and get in trouble if you touch it? That's art.
But that's museum rules, right?
That's my house, too.
That's why you're not invited, Barry.
You have pictures of. Oh no, but never mind. That's furniture.
Okay.
So
maybe something that's sort of falling in between would be maybe like a stained glass window, right? That's beautiful,
Yeah.
but it's got to keep the rain out and the wind out. It has to be like weatherproof unless it's sitting inside of it. Anyway, yeah.
I don't agree with the split. I don't think it is. I think it is. I don't think it's helpful. I think it's only there to crap on things and to create an unnecessary hierarchy between things you hang on wall and don't touch and things you put your undies in, you know, or that you sit down on. I don't, because I think art functions, whether it's and I think it's functioning from its inception point, whether it's for the artist creating it or the person saying, you know, thinking about is Mona Lisa smiling, you know, or like, oh, this painting makes me feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it Kandinsky that's in every dentist office? Kandinsky? The guy who might have had synesthesia. You know what I'm talking about? Vasily?
the YouTube comments will tell you.
None of the above, Barry, you charlatan.
I think you're thinking of Norman Rockwell.
No, more abstract. More.
That's every
I mean,
doctor's office.
That's a wild take on things.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I get frustrated with the high-low distinctions. And I can be a full-on snob. Like literature, I cannot read Ken Follett at all. Or like anything that you buy in the airport that's like right on that front rack when you walk by nope, cannot read it.
Have you read Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett?
So, you know
No.
that point where we feel like we've gone too far?
Is this that? So
I
I'm saying-
should have announced it a few minutes ago.
I don't like high-low distinctions. I can absolutely be a snob.
Yeah, I don't think it's high-low. I don't think it's high-low at all. Yeah,
Okay, so
But you said that craft sits lower than art.
it
It's
does.
humbler.
Yeah, it is.
But-
That's high-low.
Not necessarily. It's a different thing.
Okay.
So
Um,
I think that the important thing in this question is, for me, it is up to your brother whether his work is art or not. If you find beauty in it, that's wonderful. If he's doing it for the function, that's his intention.
If you make a table designed to be a table in someone's house and you call it art, I don't think I like you very much.
No, neither do I.
Sure, I agree with that. That's a table.
But if I had like a Tim Coleman table in my house, oh, I would.
Hanging that on the wall.
I
You
wouldn't-
would leave.
I wouldn't let you touch it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's a stunning thing. I'm not saying that it can't be stunningly beautiful. Is that art? I don't know, but it's not art.
There's no answer. So just let.
No, there is, and I think I gave it pretty well.
I mean, but-
in one sense, it's a distinction between a functional and a non-functional object. In the concrete sense, can you sit on it? Does it support something? Does it hold something? Does it serve a function and a purpose within, let's say, a household?
So let me ask you this. I have spoons that I love, and I use them.
Yeah.
And in using them, I am destroying them slowly.
Yeah.
When I received them, they were beautiful and artistic.
And then you put them in your mouth.
And then I keep chomping Cheerios off of them, and I am destroying them.
But every time...
If you're willing to destroy it, it is more function than art.
It's doing something.
If you're willing to destroy it.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful object. It fulfills a function and it adds to the quality of life every time you use it.
Yes. All right. To Lois's brother, if somebody calls you an artist, say thank you and don't argue.
Charge him $100 extra for it.
No, but it's like if somebody wants to call you an artist, just say thank you and then go and whatever you want. Just take the compliment. Don't argue.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Waiting for Steve Latta to reach the microphone and grab your collar.
So during the break, when we were deciding whether or not to ask this question, Barry said, "No, I hate this question." I think you were right.
Yesterday he goes, "Are you really going to throw that one out there?"
I know.
All right. Question number 4 from Gustav from Sweden. We've been getting a lot of international questions lately. I love it. For me, woodworking is all about the process and the joy of working with my hands. But I do like my furniture, and I want it to last long into the future. Mostly these days I use dowels in combination with other joinery as a means of locking pieces together. However, since I started listening to Shop Talk Live, I've started to doubt how smart it is to use dowels. You guys don't seem all that positive. So my questions are, will my furniture fall to pieces? Does splines in the dowel help, or wedges? And what are some simple alternatives to dowels if one cannot afford a domino or a biscuit machine? That part confuses the ever-living bejesus out of me, because he's doing, and we've got some pictures, Jeff, that he's drawn all over in case we can't see it. He's doing full-on wonderful joinery.
Yeah, and I think maybe just the definition, like a dowel versus a pin, it's still kind of the same thing. It's a round, long piece of wood. But I would say everything you're doing with your furniture, you're pinning joints.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really common practice. You're basically, there's a joint that's creating the structural strength to it, and the pin in your case is just locking it in place to keep it from moving. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I think where we might, and I don't think a dowel is necessarily a bad thing. I think in its proper use, if I was making a table and I connected the apron to the legs with, say, 2 3/8 inch dowels going across that joint, I don't think there's enough strength there. But if I had a mortise and tenon joint that I pinned, that's fine, because a mortise and tenon joint. If I'm doing a case, like a Krenov style case, and I use dowels on those corners, super, super strong.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. Your work is super cool. And I've never seen that necessarily, but there's a picture of a pin going in that's been curved and then wedged, and that's super strong. And then you're adding a mechanical strength to that. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say the same thing. It seems like he's talking about pinning and not just doweling.
Right.
What are some simple alternatives to dowels? If one cannot afford a domino or biscuit joint.
See, if simple alternatives to dowels, if you can't afford a domino or a biscuit joint, are tenons and dovetails.
I was going to say slip tenons. Like if he doesn't want to do.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's where it's like he's doing full, like, sliding dovetail joinery and everything. So you don't need a domino as well.
Right.
You don't need to wear belts and suspenders necessarily all the time.
Yeah.
My only statement that I would say is, from a longevity standpoint, is if he is making this piece impossible to repair at some point with the pinning.
You used hot glue last night, didn't you?
I did.
Look at your repairability on the brain.
Well, no, it's just if you are worried about longevity of your furniture and you cannot repair a piece then because you have now pinned it as well as your sliding dovetail or whatever, is that pin helping the longevity of the piece?
I think in 99.9% of the cases,
Doesn't matter.
never worry about your work needing to be repaired 200 years from now, because chances are it's not going to be around. It's not going to be valued to the point where it needs to be repaired.
Dark.
That's really good, though.
That's
a really
it's
good
like,
point.
It's
Yeah.
like professional finishers never use a wax with silicone in case you need to, like, re-strip or refinish. Why the heck would I ever do that?
But the question is about longevity.
No, make it strong. Make it so it won't break and you don't have to fix it. And then if it breaks, throw it away and make another something. It's like your spoon, right?
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
chair. A chair is a consumable object. A chair is subject, if you use it every day, a dining chair, it's subject to tremendous racking forces, and all the joints will break down and become loose at some point.
And this is one of the benefits. I'm assuming he's not a professional woodworker.
Yeah, he's a hobbyist.
So either you accept that you have a finite amount of time woodworking because you're going to make only so many dining tables and chairs,
Yeah.
or you let all your stuff break down and you get to recycle now with more woodworking skills.
That's good.
So the idea of if something breaks down that I made, it's crushing to my ego. It's like, I'll just make a new one of that.
Yeah.
You know, so when I read longevity, I didn't read 200 years. I read like 40.
I read 40.
I think longevity in terms of 10 years, meaning make something now that you would still like to have 10 years from now.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's sort
That's
of a rare,
more important.
It's kind of a rare thing.
Yeah, that is, isn't it?
How many of us just have those pieces in the house? You can't get rid of them. You can't sell them. I really want to, I can't burn it.
I've
It goes in the
purged a
basement.
lot of them, honestly.
Yeah.
When you move 1,000 miles, it helps that process.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Can you gift things you made 5 years ago?
on the sidewalk. All right, let's see. We've got some. I didn't read the listener comments for like 3 weeks, and there have been some fantastic ones. Really, lots of nice things. So, from Kyle Mix, best woodworking podcast, or best parentheses woodworking podcast. I have been, because cereal is better.
It is. Everything non-woodworking related is better.
Yeah. All right. That's going to go to my recommendations later. I have been an avid listener for several years now. I can confidently say if you have a passion for woodworking, you'll love this podcast. Great discussions on a variety of topics with pretty sound advice. Just so credit goes where it is due, this podcast inspired me to upgrade to an unlimited membership. And from Shiloh Sharps 45 to 70, no competition. I look forward to each episode with great anticipation. No other woodworking podcast comes close to the level of entertainment, value, and professionalism. It's a free podcast, so the value is pretty high. Fine woodworking doesn't just set the standard, it is the standard. And there's many more. And thank you for all of those, because of those comments, I swear it has to be, we're like number 9 in iTunes hobbies list right now, or something like that. So fantastic. Like, that really does mean a lot. And it helps us and all that. Thank you very, very much for the 5-star reviews.
Yeah, thanks very much.
I would like to recommend a podcast, which is better than this one. Everything is Alive.
Is alive?
Yes. It is a guy interviewing, like, cans of soda. It's a guy interviewing a lamppost.
Huh.
Yeah. That's all. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's really well done.
We're going to go Malcolm Gladwell, Broken Record, just because Ben hates it.
They get some really good interviews.
Yeah. I was listening to Brittany Howard, Black Keys, bunch of cool stuff.
I can't think of his name, with the beard and the no hair.
Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin, yeah.
Yeah.
He's the way he just slips into the conversations because he's in the industry.
Right.
Those are good. Mine's woodworking related because it's the woodworking podcast. You chuckleheads.
Okay, Mr. Art is functional.
So I had a bunch of chisels that I bought, just kind of waiting for me to tune them up, like flatten backs and hit them. I did it all at once. I thought I would do them one at a time, piecemeal, maybe 15 minutes. No, I just did them all at once, and it was just like eating all the vegetables. You just got out of the way. And it was not my favorite Saturday I've ever had, but now those things are screaming sharp, and they're not staring at me.
Cool.
So do that. Get out of the way.
All right. That's not very fun.
Listen to the Malcolm Gladwell podcast.
Okay. Oh, while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
I can't. That's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them to shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button and leave a nasty comment. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening. Do we want to do the art question?
Yeah.
Okay. Barry's like,
I hate it. I think it's a weird dichotomy. Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.